My name is Eric Sampson. I am 35 years old, and I am looking at my newborn daughter through the viewing window in the delivery room. Her mom is comfortably settled on the bed, and I'm waiting for the nurse to come out and dress me so I can hold my daughter in my arms again. For some reason, the nurses always want to dress me and other visitors in gowns and get us cleaned up before they let us touch the baby. I guess that makes sense because I wouldn't want anything to happen to my precious little angel before she starts living. They dress me, and I lift her from the nurse's arms. I marvel again at the absolute beauty of the little wrinkled human in my arms. From the first second I saw her, I loved her more than anything in the world, whether she knew it or not. I was already envisioning the kind of person she would become. I was so ready to watch her grow and help her along her life's journey. No matter what happened, her mom and I would be there for her, guiding her along the way. After a half hour that seemed like seconds, I handed her over to the nurse. As I was leaving the room, I noticed a very attractive blonde woman waiting for me. My happiness evaporated and my smile turned into a grimace. "Mr. Sampson," the guard said, "normally we don't let people into the delivery room unless they're family members, but this woman said she's a relative of yours." "That's okay," I told him. "Unfortunately, she's my wife." Said him, "How can you be married to a woman who unfortunately looks like that?" He asked. "Trust me, that bitch is just crazy," I said loud enough for only him to hear. "You look really good holding your baby," Andrea said as she walked over to me. "You're going to be a great dad, but I think you should reconsider what you're doing. The divorce isn't going to happen, no matter how hard you try. I'm going to prevent it by any means necessary. We need to sit down and talk. We're throwing rocks at each other through our lawyers, and they're only getting richer. We can just talk. Just a few minutes." Andrea, my wife, is beautiful, spoiled, and curious. She's used to getting her way, no matter what happens, and just can't deal with things not going her way. "I should be there when Melissa wakes up," I told her. "We have about an hour to talk. Let's go to the visitor's room. We can have some privacy there as long as you don't try to turn this into another fight. But remember, you're the one who wants to talk. If you start yelling or spewing your shit at me, I'll have them throw you the hell out of here." We walked into the auditorium and sat in the chairs against the back wall. "This is your show, Andy, so say what you want and get it over with." She licked her lips and began to speak. "First, I want to say that I forgive you for cheating on me. I forgive you for breaking the rules we set for our relationship. I forgive you for getting another woman pregnant and running off with her. I want us to put all that behind us, and I want you to come home with me so we can get our marriage back on track. I realize you're going to have to pay Melissa alimony, but I think you should limit the time you spend with this child so you don't have a hard time choosing between him and our children. I love you, Eric. I've never loved anyone but you, so I'm willing to forget everything you've done and take you back. I also promise I won't say a word about it. We'll just move forward. I won't try to keep it in your head or anything. Let's just say that this whole thing was a big mistake and let's blot it out of our minds. Melissa always wanted a baby more than anything, and Mike couldn't give it to her. So if we get back together, everyone wins." "Andy, can we really do that?" I asked with mock sincerity. "You're giving me a get-out-of-jail-free card?" "Just this once," she smiled, nodding her head and reaching for me. "I'll never lose you for anything, and I won't share you. You're mine forever. I'll kill Melissa before I let her have you." I recoiled from her like she was on fire. "Back off, you stupid bitch," I growled, then stood up and walked away. I realized that Andy couldn't be let go. She was still crazy. I walked down the hallway to Melissa's room. I smiled at the nurse and pointed to the door. "She'll be asleep soon," the nurse told me quietly. "I can't think of where I want to be," I said. "I want to be the first person she sees when she wakes up." The nurse smiled again and waved as I entered the room. Melissa was lying on her side, turned toward me. I pulled the blanket over her and sat in the chair next to the bed. She was beautiful even in her sleep. It must be from inner beauty. God knows Andy was beautiful on the outside, but when she slept, she looked like a damn shrew. Somehow, when she wasn't conscious, her inner ugliness shone through the mask of her facial expression. As I stared at Melissa's blissfully slumbering face, the last 16 months flashed before my eyes. I'm a successful architect, and Andy and I had just moved into the house we'd built. At first, some neighbors were unhappy with our house because we bought 2 adjacent lots and tore down the ranch-style houses that stood on them. We then built our dream home on that spot and re-greened it. Our house may have been a little big compared to the other houses in the neighborhood, but it was our dream house where we could grow old together and someday raise a family. And many of the neighbors didn't come around right away, but Mike and Melissa came to meet us the first day we moved in. They lived right next door to us, and from our terrace you could peek into their kitchen. Mike was overweight but with a small paunch, and he had a 2-day beard growing steadily. Melissa was very cheerful, and although not in Andy's league, was very pretty. They brought pizza and beer, and we spent that first evening getting to know them. It was the first of many evenings we spent on the patio, in the pool, or in the living room. Over the next few months, we became best friends. On weekends, Mike and I would often go bowling or play golf. We always drove either his pickup truck or my Mustang GT. I love this car. It has a custom paint job, Flowmaster exhaust, and many other modifications that are not worth talking about. If you saw the car, you would think it was the same red Mustang with the stripes along the lower body panel. Upon closer inspection, you'll notice that the stripes are the outlines of buildings that I designed. It's a beautiful car, and I love it to this day. Installing a child seat in the back will be a challenge, but you do what you have to do. Many of our evenings were spent either at Mike and Mel's or at our house. Mike, like every other guy I knew, couldn't take his eyes off Andy. Wherever she spent her time, my wife kept her eyes on her. "Have you ever thought about switching?" Mike asked me one evening when the women were busy doing something. "We don't have a swing, but it might be a good idea," I said. "No, silly, I'm talking about trying other people's stuff. It might put the spice back into your relationship. After a long marriage, even the best relationships get kind of stale. Even if you eat steak every night, sometimes you want to try a little chicken or fish, if you know what I mean." "No, I don't know what you mean. I'll see you later, Mike," I said, getting up. In the evening when I got into bed, Andy asked me why I was so upset. "It's nothing to worry about," I told her. "Mike just said something really stupid." She lay down next to me and said, "Eric, don't worry. There is no one else in the world that I want to have children with. There's no one else I love. I swear to you, we have all the time in the world. I'm going to spend the rest of my life married to you, I swear," she said. "We're going to be happy, and we're going to have the best family in the world." She hugged me, and we fell asleep. Since we'd gotten together, Andy had gotten into the habit of sleeping with one leg and one arm around me. She claimed it had become a habit and she couldn't fall asleep without me. I drove to work every day, traveling long distances in my Mustang. Andy stayed home and did chores around the house. Melissa and I often waved to each other as she drove off each morning in her old Honda. Mike was in between chores, so he stayed home. I was glad for that because it meant that in an emergency, Andy had someone to call and could get home much faster than I could. A few weeks after my conversation with Mike, the subject came up again. This time it was Andy who brought it up. "Eric," she said, "have you ever wanted to try another woman?" "Hell no," I muttered. "I love you and you're enough for me." "Well, I'm not saying I want you to go out and get some stranger. I'm just saying that maybe we should get someone else," she said. "I'm just curious." "Besides, we're almost there anyway," she said. "Andy, what are you talking about?" I asked sharply. "Haven't you noticed that the last few times Mike and Mel have come over to our house? Haven't you noticed any strange things?" she said. "While you were doing that, Mike was looking at me and I was wondering," she hesitated. "What kind of things?" I snapped back. "Well, what it looks like," she said quietly. "Be specific," I said sharply. Andy wasn't used to the harshness of my tone, so she backed away from me a little. I don't think she was afraid I would hurt her. She just wasn't used to me not giving her what she wanted right away. Let me give you an example. After I got my first commission and did a great job with it, my superiors at the time gave me a hefty raise and a bonus. I wanted us to put that money aside to start saving for a house. The next day, Andy brought me the paperwork for her BMW to sign. The down payment alone covered the entire premium, and the monthly payments would definitely tax my income. That car cost more than the house we were living in at the time. We ended up eating tuna fish for a month, but Andy got her car. "Be more specific, Andrea." "I want to make sure I understand you," I repeated. "You're asking me to have sex with another man, right?" "Well, not with another man, but with Mike," she said quickly. "No," I said sharply. "Wait, I'm sorry it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Hell no. Never in this life," I shouted as loud as I could. In that moment, for the first time since I had met her, I couldn't look at my wife in peace. I stood up, knocked over the chair I was sitting in, and left the room. A few hours later, after going out for a run and cooling down, I walked into the kitchen and saw Andy there, sitting at the kitchen table eating dinner. "Here, I'll get you a plate, honey," she said. I walked past her without saying anything, got a beer out of the fridge, and went out on the deck. I'd always loved the view from this deck. That's why it was included in my project. Looking around, I saw Melissa sitting at the kitchen table, probably preparing papers, and wondered if she knew what my wife, her supposed friend, had suggested. Most likely, she had no idea. Melissa was a good-looking woman, certainly no match for Andy, but she just needed to take better care of herself. If she got rid of that belly and tightened up a bit, she would be very pretty. I couldn't believe my thoughts were wandering so much as I watched the moon from the terrace. I guess I wanted to think about anything but Andy's proposal. I'd always thought I was enough for her. We were both perfect for each other, I'd always thought. Obviously, she needed more. I think she saw it as just another little thing to beg for and tried to get her way. I, on the other hand, took it much more seriously. To me, it was the first sign that we were drifting apart, and I loved her so much that it just broke my heart. "It's a really beautiful night. It's warm and the big old moon is lighting up all around," she said, standing behind me. "Is there anyone here who would like to try snorkeling with me in our pool? Or are we just going to go upstairs?" She came up behind me and put her arms around me. "Andrea, let me go. I came here to be alone, to think. But this is your home too, so if you need a deck, I'll go somewhere else," I said. Then I'll go sit by the pool. Isn't that far enough away from you?" She snapped back. "Not really," I snapped back. I got up, walked back into the house, and grabbed my keys from the island in the center of the large chef's kitchen. Before Andy could react, I jumped out the front door and rushed away. The exhaust and the roar of my Mustang's V8 alerted the neighbors that I was outside. It seemed like I would drive indefinitely, and although I felt better, I knew it wouldn't get rid of my problem. I say my problem because although it was Andy who was ruining our marriage, it literally hurt me to do anything that displeased her. Over the course of one stupid evening, I yelled at her, cussed at her, and walked away from her. In our entire time together, I had never done anything like that. Usually when we fought, things happened differently. We would compromise, and I would give in again and again until either I agreed with her or she got her way. Andy was my soul, so in a way, giving her what she wanted felt good to me, too. Andy's smile made me feel good, especially when I did something to trigger her. There was no way I could share her with anyone else, even temporarily. I was always paranoid about her love for me. I remember the first time we visited her family, I was jealous of her siblings. I needed her to be only with me. Her father even remarked once that his usual warning to men who date his daughters wasn't needed in my case. "Son," he said, "I call you son because I'm sure you'll marry my daughter. She loves you and would be a fool to let you go. I usually tell guys that if they hurt my little girls, I'll hunt them down and kill them myself. But in your case, I have a different warning altogether. I know you love Andrea, but remember that you can say no to her from time to time. In the end, it will make your relationship stronger. If you continue as you are now, sooner or later she will ask you for something that you are not ready to give her without giving a piece of your soul. By then it will be too late, because she's not used to you giving in to anything." "You're a good man," he told me. "Andrea needs that, but don't let it turn you into someone you don't want to be." "I would never do anything to hurt her," I told him. "I'm not worried about you hurting her," he said. "You obviously love her too much for that. I'm more worried about her hurting you." The next morning, I was about to leave the house to drive to the office when Andy came out of our bedroom. She looked just awful. Her eyes were red and puffy. She looked out of sorts. "Where the hell have you been?" she screamed. "You know I can't sleep without you." "I got back around 1 o'clock this afternoon," I replied calmly. "I just took a little ride to clear my head and think." "What did you have to think about? Why didn't you come to bed?" she asked. "I slept in one of the guest rooms on the second floor," I said and walked past her. I hardly had time to do anything that day. Andy called me twice on the way to work and then started texting me. The first thing my secretary Myrna told me when I walked into the office was to call Andy as soon as possible. I didn't, and 10 minutes later my cell phone rang. "What's up, Andrea?" I asked. "Whether you know it or not, my job isn't just an extension of home. I have a job here. That's why I come here. What's wrong with you? She asked quietly. Don't you love me anymore? We'll talk when I get home. Please don't call me again today. I hung up the phone and started trying to work, but there was no way I could get my thoughts together. I kept coming back to Andy. I was figuring out the cost of brick and siding for a project I was working on. No sooner had I finished the calculations than I started thinking about what my life would be like without Andy. I ended up doing the same calculation 4 times, but never finished it. I turned on the computer and switched to a project where I could just draw. The house I was working on was for a single guy. He was a high-ranking lawyer and wanted something out of the ordinary. I came up with a design that appealed to his taste. The house was mostly underground, with only a large sunroom visible above the surface. The house was already built and almost ready to move in. All that remained was to complete the landscaping. Things weren't going smoothly with the blueprints either. I couldn't even connect 2 damn lines without bringing up Andy. I went out to lunch with a couple clients and one of my partners to discuss a promising commercial project that would make us all a lot of money. I was still wondering what Andy was wearing and what she was doing at that moment. Did she still love me? Where had I gone wrong? Could I fix what I had done so she would need someone else? What did Mike have that I didn't? When I got home that night, I was ready to talk to Andy, but that didn't happen. As soon as I walked into the house, I could smell the steaks on the grill. As I walked through the kitchen and out onto the deck, I saw Andy in one of her bikinis and Mike grilling my Weber. Melissa was sitting at the table looking through papers. I went back into the bedroom and changed into jeans, comfortable boots, and a t-shirt. Hey, isn't it about time you put on your swimsuit? Andy smiled. Why? I asked. Well, honey, we all spend time at the pool, and we usually only wear swim trunks. Even Melissa is wearing a swimsuit, she said, smiling. The smile quickly disappeared when she saw that I wasn't smiling. Eric, I was just kidding. You know I love Melissa. She's like my best friend. I know you're tired after all that work, so just come over. You can wear whatever you want. Your steak's almost ready. If you hurry, you can eat it fresh off the grill, just the way you like it. Andy walked back toward the pool. I heard her say, he just changed his clothes. He'll be right down. I walked back out the front door. I don't think they even realized I was leaving until they heard the loud exhaust sound of my Mustang. I drove to the lake and stopped at Burger King on the way. I parked in front of the lake and ate my double cheese sandwich while playing games on my iPad. After eating, I read some stories about open marriages on one of those internet sites. I have nothing against people who want to switch partners, but it just wasn't for me. I got out of the car and spent some time throwing rocks into the lake. In the evening, I saw several attractive single women walking by alone or in groups. Several of them looked at me. One or two even walked in my direction and tried to strike up a conversation. I think my body language and the fact that I was holding my wedding ring in my hand to emphasize each proposal made the impression I wanted to make on them. They quickly backed off and left me alone. What upset me the most was that at sunset, I saw several couples who were clearly in love walking hand in hand along the boardwalk. When they smiled at each other, hugged each other, or stopped for a kiss, I wanted to shoot each of them. Out of jealousy of what they had and what I had likely lost, I wanted to walk up to each guy and say something to him. Run away from that bitch as fast as you can before she rips your heart out, I said. Sure, it's all good now. But is it worth the pain you'll feel when that bitch decides you're not enough for her and wants to entertain your friends? I went out some more that night. When I got home, it was about 2 in the morning. Andy was lying on the couch in the living room, wrapped up in a blanket. No matter how quietly I closed the door, she was still awake. Her eyes were blood red again. She was clearly crying. I didn't say a word to her, not wanting to upset her further, so I just turned around and headed up the stairs. Eric, what the hell is going on with you? She shouted. Just yesterday, and it's been 10 goddamn years since you've noticed me. And now you can't even be in the same room with me. It's like I'm a piece of shit on your shoe and you're just trying to scrape me off. Andrea, I have no intention of trying to talk to you while you're yelling at me, I said. I came home with the intention of trying to talk to you, but you were having a party. You wanted to talk to me so badly while I was at work, but as soon as I got home, that need just evaporated. I need to get some sleep because I have to go to work tomorrow anyway, so why don't you schedule a meeting with me in your busy schedule? We'll talk then. What's the party? She asked. It was just Mike and Melissa there. We see them a lot. They practically live here. What's wrong with you? Don't you love me anymore? Yes, Andy, I love you. I've always loved you, but I guess that's our problem, isn't it? I said. Again, I have to work tomorrow. I need to sleep. Why don't you call Myrna and set up an appointment so we can talk? I headed back down the stairs to get away from her. I was very proud of myself for my restraint. Where are you going? Our bedroom is upstairs? She snapped at me. When I fell asleep, the only sounds heard in the house were the sound of the door closing to the guest room downstairs and Andy's sobs. The next night, Andy was waiting for me at the kitchen table. Something was cooking in the oven and the house smelled wonderful, whatever it was. Can we talk? She asked. I sat down at the table across from her. Eric, what's going on with us? She asked. One day we're the perfect couple, and I'm sure that above all else you love me. Then the next day you can't even look at me. We haven't done that in 2 days, and while that doesn't seem unusual for most couples, it's an eternity for us. I miss you. I'm going crazy. I want us to be together again like we're supposed to be. Andy, that might not be possible, I said. Why not? She asked. What did you do? Did something happen while you were driving around town? Andy, I didn't do anything except drive around town by myself. You tricked us, I snapped back. She shook her head. I didn't do anything, she said. Nah. So you don't think that by telling me you wanted to have fun with another guy, you hurt us? I snapped back. You don't think the fact that I wasn't enough for you hurt us? I've read stories about open marriages, Andy. They're rarely happy. More often than not, they're just starting down the road to divorce. Not all of them end in divorce, but the percentage of those that break up is higher than those that stay together. This is especially true if only one partner wants to do so. Anything that unravels, unravels and closes. That's the thing, she said, laughing. I went through 2 days of hell thinking you didn't love me anymore because I was curious. Curiosity killed the cat, Andy said. I really thought I was over it, she said. You said no, and I left it at that, ending the subject. But no, you have to go and worry about it, pouting like a child. Damn it, Eric. Hearing Mike talk about it gave me pause for thought. Especially after that last time we were all together, what that might be like. You're the only guy I've ever been with. I just wanted to see if all guys are the same. It's not like I'm going to fall in love with Mike. He's a lazy, worthless slob. And anyway, he'd be the best person for me to try. So you decided to try after talking to Mike? I asked. He asked me about it about 2 weeks ago and I flatly refused. I guess one of us thinks our marriage means something, and now we know who. Mike doesn't care about your curiosity. He only wants one thing. He's stuck with Melissa, who, although a very nice woman, is pretty ugly. I guess that makes you feel special or curious, huh? It may not be everything, but it's one of the reasons I've been thinking about Mike, she snapped back. I really wanted to try someone else, and I chose Mike because he's no danger to us. He's your best friend, so he won't try to take advantage of the situation. I'm not attracted to him, so I'm not going to want him. It's only going to be one time, and you're going to be there for him. Maybe you can satisfy your curiosity with Melissa. Oh, you made the damn list, I said. Eric, this isn't about us. I don't want to be with anyone but you for the rest of my life. I want us to grow old together like we planned. I'm not going to fall in love with Mike and leave you. It's not that you're not enough for me. No, Andy, I said. I thought you loved me, she said. Guess I was wrong. You're full of shit and always have been. Oh, Andy, I love you. You say it so often like it's a broken record. But when I need something else from you, you blow me off. It's only going to be one time. No, I said. That's like you, she snapped back. You're so selfish, only thinking about what you want. I don't matter. If not letting you have fun with some guy is selfish, then I guess I'm selfish, I told her. Andy, I really do love you. I love you too much to ever want to share you with anyone else. That's exactly what I meant by selfish, she snapped back. You just don't know how to share. We've been together for 10 years. We probably do it at least 7 or 8 times a week, if not more often. Since the day we got together, no one else has touched me. That's 7 or 8 times in 52 weeks a year, which is about 400 times a year at least. If you multiply that by 10 years, that's over 4,000 times, Eric. I was just asking to let someone else do it once. If the only reason we're together is because no one else can touch me, then our relationship is pretty sad. I remained silent. I was tired of talking. You know, I could go and do this behind your back and not say anything, she said. I could go out and find some guy to satisfy my curiosity and never tell you. You would never have known. But I tried to be honest with you, and look how that turned out. It's nice to know you trust me, Eric. What's that saying? Love without trust means nothing. I came to you and tried to talk to you about my feelings, and this is what I got. Thank you, Eric, but it's my body, and I make my own decision. Good night, Andrea, I said. Wait, Eric, I don't want this conversation to end like this. We have to come to some kind of decision, she said. I'm going for a run, I told her. Andrea, you're a grown woman. Do what you have to do. But if you do, make sure you can deal with the consequences of your actions, because this conversation might not just end here. Where are you going? She shouted. We're not done yet. Maybe we will be done, I said. I changed my clothes and went for a run. When I came back from my run, I was covered in sweat, but I felt better. I got in the shower and turned on the water. I didn't notice that Andy had joined me until I heard the door close. She ran her hands down my back. I moved away from her as fast as I could. Andy, there are 3 bathrooms in this house. Find another one, I said, pushing her away from me. I took a shower while Andy sat there with a shocked expression on her face. I then got dressed. Are you ready to finish our conversation? She asked. Our conversation is over, I said. I'll see you later. If you walk out the door, I'll entertain Mike, she said. Andy, you're going anyway. You made your decision before we even started talking. I don't even know why you felt the need to tell me about it, I said, looking at her. She was looking at the floor and couldn't meet my gaze. I wish you would have realized what I was going through and just let me take the thing away. It doesn't mean anything, she said. If you do that, Andy, our relationship will never be the same again. I won't be able to keep tabs on you all the time. So I hope your curiosity is worth our marriage. But like you said, it's your body and your decision, I said. Right? Maybe it's you who's leading us astray with your stubbornness, she said. The only response I made was to slam the door and get ready to leave. I got home early that night and went to bed in the guest room as I had done most of the week. Andy knocked on the door around midnight saying she wanted to talk. I locked the door so she couldn't come in and pretended to be asleep when I heard her. The next day, my world began to crumble. I got home at my usual time and noticed that instead of sitting in the kitchen checking my work, Melissa was sitting on the porch. Hi, Mel, I called out. She looked up at me, and the expression on her face was terrible. She was crying. I walked over to her to see what was wrong and realized, I couldn't sit in the kitchen and watch them go out on the deck, she said through her tears. I burst into the house and saw Mike getting ready to dive into my pool. The moment he jumped into the air, heading for the water, I kicked him as hard as I could right in the face. He fell into the water and spit out a mouthful of water. His nose was smashed and blood was running down his face. Get out of my house, I told him, and never come back. Hey, buddy, calm down, it's over. She wanted this. She was the one who suggested it in the first place. She told me you were okay with it. So I went along with it. Who wouldn't agree? Don't make me ask you to leave again, I said. I won't be so nice the second time. I turned and saw Andy coming out of the house. She hadn't heard what had happened between Mike and me. She ran up to me, smiling. I told you it didn't mean anything, she said. Now that it's over, we can get back to normal. I pulled out my iPhone and called the local cab service and gave them our address. The cab should be here in about 10 minutes. That's how long you have to pack, I said. If you're here a minute after that, I'll throw you out on the street in a bikini. Eric, what's going on? She asked. It's over between us, Andy. It's over. You can go to your parents, go to a motel, or stay with Mike. I don't care. Just get out of my house, I yelled at her. Please, Eric, it's over. It won't happen again, she whined. You told me last night to keep going. I knew you didn't like it, but you just told me to keep going so I could put it out of my mind and we could go back to our house. So, Andy, you may have heard that, but that's not what I said. You were the one who said that if I walked out the door, you would entertain Mike. I said you'd probably do it anyway. I'm not the one who said you should do it. Ever since the damn idea came up, I made it clear to you that I was against it. I've also warned you that if you have to do it, you need to be prepared for the consequences. And the consequences are as follows. You have 6 minutes to pack your things before the cab arrives. I don't need a cab, she said. I'm going to my parents' house in my BMW. When you pull your head out of your ass, I'll be there. Andy, the car is in my name. If you take it, I'll report it stolen, and your ass will be in jail before nightfall, I said. She looked at my face, saw that I was serious, and ran into the house crying. A few minutes later, a cab pulled up. Hey, buddy, did anyone from here call a cab? The driver asked. I just nodded my head. Andy, your car is here, I shouted. If he leaves, you'll have to walk. I gave the driver 100 and told him to take her wherever she wanted to go. Andy came out of the house with a hastily packed overnight bag. You should have packed more stuff. You're not coming back, I told her. Please, Eric, we need to talk, she whined, looking at my rapidly thinning back. A few minutes after the cab pulled away, Andy started calling me. I turned off my phone and disconnected the rings on all the phones in the house. I went out to the terrace and sat down. As bad as I felt, there was someone who felt even worse. Come on, Mel. Misery loves company, I said. We're going out to eat. She didn't say anything, just sat there. Then I took her hand, pulled her to me, and sat her in the front passenger seat of the Mustang. We drove around town until I found a nice restaurant. I made reservations for both of us, got the food, and got back in the car. I drove us to the lake, the same place I drove to every night. We ate in silence, and suddenly Mel started spewing all her guilt at me. Why did he... Well, I know why he did it, but why did she do that to you? Are they crazy? I know Mike doesn't respect me, but I thought Andrea loved you. I'm sure she does. You're all she talks about. Eric this, my Eric that. Why is she doing this? I thought she was my friend. I started stroking her back. She sobbed a little and spoke again. I know Mike has been mad at me lately, and this is just his way of getting back at me for a remark I inadvertently made. But this is getting out of hand, she said. I'm sorry, Eric. You're probably worse off than I am. I'm fine, I said. What do you mean Mike's mad at you? Well, Mike had an accident when he was younger, and he can't have kids. I already knew that when we got married. I had made my peace with it. I had always wanted children, but I wanted Mike just as much. So I became a teacher. Lately, that hasn't been enough, and I really want to experience motherhood. Eric, I want a family. I want to share all this love I have and raise my own children, not teach other people's children. So I approached Mike about adopting a child. He went ballistic. His words were, "So I'm not a man if I can't knock you up." Well, bitch, I'll show you who's the man. It took him 3 weeks, but he did it. We were silent for a while. When it got dark, the lovebirds went outside, and I got really upset watching them walk hand in hand in front of that damn lake. Besides, there were too many big rocks that were perfect for throwing, so we left. I came home to an empty house. Melissa came home to Mike's house. At first, I could hear him yelling at her, and she yelled back. After a while, the yelling stopped, and I saw her sitting at the kitchen table with papers. The next morning, I went to work as usual. Myrna handed me a stack of messages from Andy. I threw them in the basket and told her not to forward any calls from Andy to me. If she calls me, just tell her I don't take calls or messages from her. I then gave her my iPhone and told her to go to the ATANT store and change my phone number. Around 10 a.m., I got a call from Robert Morgan, Andy's father. He was going to be in town that morning and wanted to take me out to lunch. I met him at the Texas Roadhouse restaurant at noon. I hadn't seen him in about 3 weeks, and at his age, that kind of stress couldn't be good for him. Hi, Eric, he said. Let's get to the point. We both know why we're here. I warned you about this before you even married her. She can stay with us for a few days until you both cool off, but Martha and I want to stay out of it. Well, when you and Martha kick her out, she can stay with her sisters for a while and then with her brother, I said. Hopefully by then we'll have some sort of financial arrangement and she can find a place to live, I said quietly. Eric, what are you talking about? He asked. Divorce takes a minimum of 6 months in this state, but our attorneys will have an agreement ready long before then, I said. Between you and me, I'd rather settle for a lump sum than monthly alimony where I have to write her a check every month or something. I just want this to be over and settled so I can move on with my life. Eric, I still don't understand you. Andrea said you had a disagreement and you lashed out at her, so she decided to stay with us for a few days until you calmed down. Last night she cried her eyes out and won't eat anything. I know my daughter. When Andrea is right about something or thinks she is, she's cold as ice. But last night she cried herself to tears. I know she did something that took you too far. Did she buy another car? Last time she did that, you didn't have more than $50 a week to live on. She couldn't even drive it anywhere because you couldn't afford gas. I thought you were doing okay financially now. Robert, I don't think I should tell you about what Andy did, I said. It's not my place to discuss someone's actions. Damn it, he said. She really tricked you, didn't she? And the stupidest thing I can see from the fact that you're on the verge of tears is that you still love her. Eric, I already warned you about her. Whatever she's done, try to deal with it. She loves you and you obviously love her. You should be together, but don't back down. Maybe you should consider marriage counseling before going through with the divorce. I have heard you tell her more than once that you would do anything for her. Isn't she worth one chance to save your marriage? Andrea has always been strong in spirit. I raised her that way, he said. You know how the two of you love to sit on the big old deck behind your house and look at the moon? When Andrea was little, she loved to climb out the window onto the roof and look at the moon. I told her not to do that because she would fall off the roof and break her neck. But she did it anyway, so I boarded up the windows. One day I was out of town on business and Martha was at a sorority meeting. Andrea took a hammer, pulled all the nails out of the window, and climbed out on the roof. It had rained the day before and the shingles were still slippery. Andrea fell off the roof and broke her arm. If the bushes had not prevented her from falling, she would have fallen headfirst and possibly broken her neck. After that, she never went on the roof again. Andrea can learn, he said, but sometimes she has to learn the hard way, losing something very important to her. Maybe her having to be away from you for a while will solve that problem. I'll ask her what she did and get back to you. Over the next week or so, my life moved in two directions at once. I started spending time with Melissa. It seemed natural. She was really pissed at Mike, and I missed Andy like hell. Melissa started running with me in the evenings. She also started going to my gym. I think a lot of it had to do with her anger and frustration over Mike. We talked a lot about our situations. If Mike loved me or treated me as well as you treat Andy, I would forgive him anything, she said. But in our case, that's exactly the problem. Mike doesn't love me. Maybe he once did. But now I'm just an old shoe to him. I go to work every day and bring in money, and he's been unemployed for 4 years. When I come in, I have to cook and clean before I start my exams. I was tired of being taken for granted, and that was the last straw. I hadn't told anyone about it before, but he had cheated on me before that. Andy knew from the beginning that I was adamantly against it, I said. She just took me too far this time. Eric, we're friends. So there are two things, she told me. One, every time someone mentions her name, you almost cry because you love her so much, and being separated from her is killing you. Two, you've been together for 10 freaking years and this is the first mistake she's made. For your own peace of mind, give her another chance. At least talk to her before you give up on her. The easy way out is to just walk away without trying to fix anything. I wish Mike had screwed up the first time so I could forgive him, but it's happened too many times for me. Andy showed up at my office the next day. The security guards had been warned not to let her into the building, so she sat outside the entrance crying until someone called the police. The police officers entered the building and asked to see me. Sir, your wife is downstairs and she is not in the best condition. We need you to go down and talk to her so she doesn't do something to herself or anyone else, the first officer said. No, I said. Have a good day. Sir, this conversation isn't over, the policeman said. He was clearly angry at my flippant attitude and wanted to prove something. How about we arrest you for non-cooperation and put you in the same cell with your beautiful wife? Then you'll have to talk to her, sir, he said. What if I snap my fingers? I said, looking him straight in the eye. What would that do, sir? He asked. When I snap my fingers, one of my deputies will call my lawyer. He'll be at the station before we even get there. By the time you get me to the building to conduct your bogus investigation, you'll be suspended, and I'll have sued the city for more money than you've made in your entire career. To avoid further embarrassment, why don't we take this to my office so I can explain to you what's really going on here, I told him. As we entered the office, I asked him if he was married. He replied that he was. I asked him what he would do if his wife asked him about sleeping with his best friend. He replied that there was no way he would have tolerated it. That's exactly what she did, I told him. I told her I wouldn't tolerate it, but she went ahead and did it anyway. I called her a cab and sent her to her parents' house while we sorted out the divorce. She can't contact me at home, so now she's harassing me at work. I'm a partner here. We own the building, and I have the right to bar entry to anyone who might cause a scene or disrupt my business. I treated this woman like a queen, and this is how she repaid me. I told him. I don't want to ever see her again. I never insulted her, hit her, or even yelled at her. Don't I have the right to be alone in my workplace? Sir, you should file a restraining order, he said. We had no idea of the situation when we arrived. Thank you for explaining it to me. We won't bother you again. But sir, may I ask you one more thing? I nodded. If you really don't want anything to do with her, why are you so sad right now? I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult you, but you look like you're on the verge of tears. You obviously love her very much. Why don't you at least talk to her? Of course he was right. It was time to talk to her. I came down the stairs just as she was getting into the Ford Fusion. It was probably Martha's car. I knew Robert drove a Cadillac STS. I tapped on the window and she jumped out of the car and tried to hug me. I recoiled from her. Eric, I miss you so much. Please let me come home. I keep trying to tell you it's over, she said. Andrea, if you want to talk, I'll listen. But it has to be in private. I don't want you embarrassing me at work. Meet me at my house tonight around 7, I said. You don't mean our house? She asked. I'll just go there now and wait. I'll make us dinner. Andrea changed all the locks. It's not our house. Maybe you'll get it after the divorce. Who knows? I don't want any damn dinner. I'm just giving you a chance to say what you want to say, and I have a condition. What condition? She asked. If you want this meeting to happen, you have to tell your parents the truth about what happened between us. There will be no innuendos. Have your father call me at 7 when you arrive so he can tell me he knows what happened, or don't come. I won't let you in until I talk to him. Eric, can't we keep this between us? She whimpered. No one else has to know. If I don't hear from your father, I won't let you in. And this time I'll call the police myself, I said. That same afternoon at work, I got some bad news. The buyer of my almost finished underground house had died in a car accident. I was confident I could sell the house and had the landscapers finish it to put it on the market. The house was too fancy for everyone to like, but the right buyer would be willing to pay top dollar for it. At 6 o'clock, I went out for a run with Melissa. We had a good time together. I could have run faster on my own, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. So how are things at Mike and Mel's house? I asked. Damn cold, she laughed. He doesn't talk to me, I don't talk to him. But you know, I like it. For the first time since we've been married, he doesn't order me around. I picked up one of those pamphlets they give at adoption places and looked through it. There aren't as many single-parent adoptions now as there used to be. Of course, I'll have to find a lawyer and file for divorce first. But I finally realized that he needs me a lot more than I need him. I got home at 6:45, and I had the feeling that I was being watched. I went into the house and took a shower. At 6:58, the phone rang. I picked it up and answered it. Eric, I'm so sorry, son. I understand why you're upset. I can't believe my daughter could behave like that. But I believe you have a chance to mend your relationship if you're willing to forgive her and put it behind you. Send there. After a few minutes, I hung up the phone and walked to the door. Andrea was standing there. Can I come in? She asked. I feel so stupid asking you to do this. This is my house, too. Let's talk here on the porch, I said. It's a beautiful night and it's nice out here. Andy, we're not getting back together. We're just here to talk, I said. You're the one who wanted to talk to me so badly, so I'll let you start first. You're going to tell me what you want to say. And then we'll continue. What do you want me to say? She asked. I want our life back. What else do you need to say? I know you still love me. It's going to take us a little while to get over it, and then it'll all be in the past. We haven't lived together for 2 weeks. You've called me hundreds of times, sent your father to talk to me, bothered me at work, lied to your parents about why we broke up, and that's all you have to say. I got even more upset. What do you want me to say? She asked. Nothing, Andrea, I said, standing up. I'll see you soon. I started to walk away into the house and she grabbed my hand and started crying. She tried to get me to turn around, but I wouldn't let her pull me with her. She walked over to me and noticed that I was crying too. Tears rolled from my eyes, rolling down my cheeks and leaving tiny tracks on the porch tiles. What do I have to say to make this right? She exclaimed. Suddenly, I lost my composure. I pushed her away from me harder than I ever had before. I was really glad she hadn't fallen off the porch because I would have probably been thrown in jail for assault. How about 2 damn words, Andrea? I shouted, the first of which was, I'm sorry. Have you ever apologized for any of this? Are you sorry for betraying our marriage vows? Are you even sorry for what you did to us? Are you sorry for hurting me? You know, you really ripped my heart out. How about ruining a marriage that was probably supposed to last forever? I guess you don't know that word. You know, now I realize how stupid I've been acting all this time. And then the second word comes up. Love. Since Andrea and I got together, we've never loved each other, but we've always loved you. I should have just fallen down and worshipped the great goddess Andrea. Screw you, Andrea. Oh, wait a minute. Mike already did that. That's why we're here. I walked into the house and slammed the door shut. I left her crying on the porch. About 20 minutes later, she rang the doorbell. I looked out the peephole and opened the door ajar. Andrea, I'm sick of talking to you. Get a lawyer. You're going to need one. I'm sorry, she said. I love you and I don't want to lose you. I don't want to live the rest of my life without you. This isn't how it was supposed to happen. I went back out on the porch to listen to her. Eric, I'm curious about a lot of things. When I was a kid, I used to stick a pin in an electrical outlet to see what would happen. Now I wanted to know what it was like to do it with someone else. So I did it. It wasn't that good. In fact, it was nothing. It wasn't even close to as good as what we had. It was a mistake, but you overstated it. I didn't cheat on you, and I don't consider my act a violation of our marriage vows. I told you what I was going to do. I wanted you to be there, but you refused. I wanted it to be exciting and fun, but it was just boring. I didn't even experience the pleasure of fat old Mike piling on top of me. I barely got wet, and he didn't even last long. And for this, I have to give up my house, my car, my marriage, my husband, and my happiness. It's just not fair. Andrea, I told you there would be consequences, I said. You just didn't listen. You never bloody listen. Things always have to be the way you want them to be. There wasn't anything special about our marriage as it was. There should be something new we could bring into the bedroom and try from time to time, she said. You've tried women and brought home new tricks, and so have I. I don't want us to bore each other, she said. Andrea, I've never wanted anyone but you. But now you've ruined it because I don't want you anymore, I snapped back. She looked like I'd punched her in the face. After 10 years, I make one mistake and that's it. Please give me another chance. I'll do whatever you want me to do. We'll go to counseling like my father suggested. You can do whatever you want to do to get revenge or to make yourself feel better. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. I promise. It won't happen again. Don't we deserve another chance? You always said you'd do anything for me. I'm begging you. Please give me a chance. Let me make this one mistake. I swear you'll never regret it. She looked at me and realized she had me in her hands. You can move in with us tomorrow, I told her. But you really need to find a therapist for our counseling sessions. Her smile could have melted a glacier, and she rushed toward me. I backed away from her and held my hands up. We're not ready for that yet, I said seriously. I'll see you tomorrow. The next evening, as I was finishing my run, Melissa pointed me out on the porch. That's your wife out there, she said. Forgive me if I don't go over to talk to her. I know I'll have to eventually, but today just isn't the right occasion. I'll see you tomorrow, Mel, I said. Are you sure that's a good idea? She asked. Why wouldn't it be? We're friends now, and best friends because of our shared experiences. I smiled. Well, I was just thinking that maybe Andy wants to spend more time with you, she said softly. Then she should learn to run, I said. I've learned a lot about her through this incident, and I want things to get better between us, but I'm not sure I can do that. Some things can be put up with, and some things you'll have to part with. In this case, only I can make that decision, and I have no idea. I love her so much that I was in pain every day she was gone. I don't know if I agreed to this because it was the right thing to do or just to stop the pain. I get goosebumps when she gets close to me. I'm just not sure it's going to work out. You're not sure it will work? Andy asked. Hi, Melissa, she said coldly. Andy walked over to me and tried to take my hand. I yanked it away and said, I'm not sure we can work again. I'm sure we're both enough so you won't have to, she smiled. Just watch. Things will be better than before, I promise. Nothing will ever come between us again. What the hell have you been eating? There's nothing in the freezer, she yelled. Wait, there's salmon in the freezer. Why don't we cook it on the grill, on the deck? I'll cook rice and vegetables to go with it. I'll go shopping tomorrow while you're at work. So we did. The first night we were together again was awkward to the point of being impossibly awkward. Andy kept talking to fill in all the pauses in the conversation. It was as if she thought that if we stopped talking, we'd break up again. In the back of my mind, I realized that the easy chemistry we once shared was broken. I hoped that one day we would get it back, but I didn't know when or how that might happen. Andy started to say something to me, but her words were drowned out by loud rumbling and screaming from the next room. "And this happens a lot?" Andy asked. "Almost every night," I replied. "When did it start?" she asked. I just looked at her like she was stupid. "Oh," she replied. "I guess it's my fault too. But they've been married longer than we have. They'll yell a little to blow off steam and then everything will be fine. I'm sure of it." Mel's saving up for a divorce lawyer. That's her job. She's done with Mike for good. Unless something drastic happens in the next few weeks. They broke up, said I. "How do you know that?" Andy asked. "How do you know that?" Andy asked. "Mel told me," I replied. "Snim, for a man who doesn't touch me and barely talks to his own wife, you seem to be pretty damn good with Melissa," snapped Andy. "Every man needs to have someone he can trust," I said. "Someone to talk to about his problems." "That's the thing," Andy snapped back. "It should be me." "It's always been you. Until you became a problem and lost my trust," I said. "Trust is something that has to be earned over time. When we first started dating, it took a long time before we started relying on each other. It was easy then, because we had no history and we never hurt each other. For over 10 years, we loved each other, trusted each other unconditionally, and we had a connection. We had chemistry based on the fact that we almost knew each other's thoughts. Our hearts beat together, Andy. I didn't care about friends, family, work, or money. Nothing came before you. You were more than me. I was willing to die for you. I had 2 damn wishes, Andy. Do you know what they were?" "Yes," she answered sadly. "All I wanted was to grow old with you so we could have a kid or two. I don't need to be rich. I don't need to be famous or powerful. Andy, that's all I wanted. And you ruined it with your curiosity. Remember how many nights we sat here just cuddling and looking at the moon? Since we moved here, we've probably only turned on that big-ass TV a few times. Not because it doesn't show anything, but because we just don't need it. Andy, it's gone. I agreed to give it a try, but I'm not sure we can fix it. But that was one time, and one time only. You can't even try to forget about it. It hurts me, too. I keep feeling like I'm just a broken toy to you. You don't treat me like a person who feels and makes mistakes. You act like a spoiled little boy who has soiled his princess doll and doesn't want to play with it anymore because someone else touched it," she said. "It wasn't just a physical act, it was something special, like we brought our souls closer together by sharing our bodies. And now my fairy princess has shared her body with the troll from next door. Basically, we're not exclusive anymore, so there's nothing special about it anymore. It's just gotten cheaper. It's something that, with the right circumstances, anyone can get. So who or what are you interested in next, Andy?" "Whoever or whatever it is, I'm not making a mistake if I tell you about it," she snapped back. "I see what it cost me to be honest. I'll try lying next time." "Andy, right now the only thing holding us together is the thinnest thread imaginable. If there's ever a next time, we'll break up so fast you won't even notice it. You won't even see me until we meet in court. I was so close to dumping your cheating ass this time that—" I stopped talking before I said something I later regretted. Even in the darkness, it was obvious that Andy was crying. I realized I had let my anger make me say something I shouldn't have. "Good night, Andy," I said. "I'm sorry for the things I said. I shouldn't have said them. I'm probably still mad about the whole thing. Maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe we should have gone to counseling before we lived together again. I'm glad you let me come back. I wouldn't have been able to sleep alone another night," she said. "I'd go crazy if I had to spend another day without seeing you. Why do you think I showed up at your work yesterday? I know I'll have to work hard to get Eric back to you, but I'll do it. I swear things will be even better with us," she said. "Now let's go to bed." She followed me upstairs, and when I got to the master bedroom, she came in and sat on the bed. She pulled her shirt off over her head and began to undress. "Andy, what are you doing?" I asked. "Getting undressed so we can get into bed, silly," she smiled. "Andy, we won't be sleeping together or doing anything else for a while," I said. "There are plenty of bedrooms in the house. Take your pick." Andy tried her best to hide her tears. "You're not even trying," she said. "Maybe you don't love me anymore." The next morning, I got up, showered, and managed to drive out almost before Andy got out of bed. I was already pulling out of the driveway when Andy came running out of the house. She tapped on my window and I rolled it down. "I left you a key on the island in the kitchen," I said. "I didn't have time to cancel your credit cards, so they're still working." I raised the window for her to tap on it again. "Other than that, you were going to leave without saying goodbye to me?" she asked. "I noticed you don't want to kiss me or touch me, but you have to say goodbye to me out of courtesy." "Andy, you were asleep," I said. "I didn't want to wake you up. I didn't sleep very well anyway, and you can wake me up anytime you want. Even if it's just to say goodbye, to say good night or good morning to me. Better yet, if you want to kiss me or hug me," she said. "No matter what I've done, I'm still yours and always will be. I know I messed up, but I'm trying to make it right." When I got to work, Myrna asked me, "Are you back with Andy?" "Sort of, on probation," I replied. "Good, maybe now you can pull your head out of your ass," she said. "She left you a whole bunch of messages saying the same thing. She loves you. You must have shaken the shit out of her last night. Why not give her your new phone number so she can call you herself and save me the embarrassment in the future?" By the time I got home that night, I was feeling better. I said hello to Andy as I entered the house and started to change for my run. "Is it okay if I have a couple guests over for dinner?" she asked. "Andy, it's your house too. You don't have to ask me things like that. You haven't asked before either." In fact, I was even glad we wouldn't be spending another awkward night alone together. I met Mel on the way out of the house. We ran our usual slow 4-mile lap and chatted the whole way. I couldn't help but notice that Mel had lost a lot of weight, especially in the belly area, and looked really good. "I bought a new swimsuit today," she said. "It's still one piece, but Mike's eyes widened when he saw it on me. He came over to me and started reaching for me until I told him if he touched me, I'd cut his balls off." "How's it going?" she asked. "Weird," I replied. "Our chemistry is just gone. It's like I'm starting life with a new person, and sometimes I get so mad at her." "It'll pass," Mel said. "The first time Mike cheated on me, it took over 6 months before I could even sleep in the same room with him. After another month, things got better between us, but even then it wasn't the same. Give it time." When we were done, I said goodbye to Mel and went into the house. Andy opened the door for me and then went to talk to Mel. After getting out of the shower, I went downstairs to see what Andy had made for dinner. It smelled wonderful. Stepping out onto the deck, I immediately felt irritated. Mike was sitting nervously in one of my chaise lounges. "Listen, I told you to never show up at my damn house again, asshole," I snapped at him. "Get out, now." "Eric, babe, I asked Mike and Melissa to come over for dinner and a swim tonight," Andy said. "Please sit down, I have something to say." Melissa got up and walked over to the lounge chairs next to us, and I was shocked. A month of running and overeating had done wonders for her figure. I found it hard to take my eyes off her. This time, I couldn't hide my reaction. I hoped Andy and Mike hadn't noticed anything, but Mel grinned slightly. "Up until recently, the four of us were best friends," Andy began. "Mike and I did something that, while it was cheap, stupid, and not even good, ruined that friendship. The four of us had 7 relationships. Us guys as a whole, Mel and me, Mike and me, Mel and Eric, and 2 marriages. Of those 7 relationships, 6 of them were either broken or severely damaged. I don't think our relationships will ever be the same again. We may never be friends again. It may be too much to hope for, but I have a suggestion that might help at least save these 2 marriages." "I don't think that's possible, Andrea," Melissa said. "I feel like Eric doesn't love me anymore, and it's killing me," Andy said. "I would give anything for him to hold me again. He hates Mike so much that I can feel his heat right now. And you, Mel, are not ready to even think about forgiving Mike. Eric hates Mike. He makes him think I'm damaged goods and he doesn't need me anymore. You hate me too, Melissa. And you hate Mike for doing this to me. Things are so bad because there's no balance. To balance it out, I think Eric and Melissa need to get on it." No one said a word. Crickets could be heard chirping in the background. "And how does that help?" Mike asked. "They're practically dating already," he muttered. "She comes over to your house every day to run or swim with him or work out with him. They even have dinner together a lot. Not that I'm complaining, because all this working out and shit makes her look better than ever. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I cheated on Mel way more often than I should have. Andy, all that shit I told you was bullshit. I just wanted you." but I'm human. I have urges. How do we know those two weren't already doing it? They just didn't tell us. I keep seeing her watching him from our kitchen window while she checks her damn papers. Melissa and I have never done that, I said. Neither of us is a cheater, and I hate to admit it, but I agree with Mike. I don't see how two evils can make one good. If Mike stole your baseball and soiled it, wouldn't it be fair if you used his ball and soiled it too? Then you'd be even, and could be friends again, Andy says. It's simplistic, but there's logic to it. Let's just eat and talk about it later, Andy says. We ate, and even though we've had dinner together many times before, this time was different, even more so than I had expected. I hated Mike and couldn't imagine talking to him again, let alone us becoming friends. Mike didn't hate me, but he felt uncomfortable around me because he didn't know if I would jump up and kick his ass at any moment or decide I wanted to entertain his wife, who he was suddenly interested in. Melissa was mad at Mike and was planning to divorce him and adopt a baby. I still didn't know how I felt about Andy, but I had a hard time looking away from Melissa. Melissa felt sorry for Andy, but she kept looking at me. Andy was mad at Mike for lying to her and using her. Andy was jealous of Melissa because Mel and I were the only ones at the table talking to each other, and for once she had the idea that someone could take away what she wanted, which was me. After dinner, Andy cleared the table. Mike sat alone on the deck and watched Mel and I talking to each other at arm's length. Mel and I decided to play with Mike and Andy's minds a little. Melissa and I decided to think about it, I announced. We've really become friends through all of this, and we're going to spend a little more time together. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll do it and not tell you. Or maybe we won't and say we did, just to mess with you. Oh, hell no, Mike said. I don't like that either, Andy snorted. To quote the words someone said to me not too long ago, these are our bodies, and we can do whatever we want with them, I said. Tomorrow night, Mel and I are going out together. Maybe by the time we get back, everything will have happened. Maybe not. Why don't you just take her upstairs and do it right now, Mike said. Let's just get this shit over with. I really don't like this, Andy said. It's not fair. Why? I asked. You did it your way and then bragged about it. You couldn't wait to tell me how you did it, and it wasn't nice and it didn't mean anything. And then you expected me to just leave it at that and say, Andy, you were right. It's all goddamn fine. But things aren't fine, are they, Andy? And it probably won't ever be okay again. That's why Mel and I are going to make it the way we want it, just like you did. Only this time the cheaters are going to sit at home and suffer, I said. But there's a difference here, Andy said. Mike thinks I'm spoiled and wouldn't put up with my shit for anything. And I think Mike is a disgusting slob and I'm not attracted to him at all. I just wanted someone other than Eric for once, damn it. Melissa, deny it if you want, but you're attracted to my husband. You're attracted to Eric. There's a real danger that you're both enjoying this too much, so I agree with Mike. You two should just end it or forget the whole thing. I've been through too much crap trying to get my husband back to just give him to you. Melissa and I looked at each other and pulled closer. Then we wrapped our arms around each other and Andy looked on in horror, tears in the corners of her eyes. I had to admit that she felt really good, just amazing. Then we brought our faces closer together, pushed away from each other and shook hands. I'll see you tomorrow, Mel, I said. Don't forget we're going to run 5 miles. I grabbed a beer from the table and headed upstairs. Well, I need to check the papers, Mel said as she headed into the next room. Mike and Andy just stood there with their mouths open. After a while, Andy knocked on the door of my room. Can we talk? She asked. I guess so, I replied. She entered the room wearing a long robe that covered everything. This was a first. She had obviously been crying again. I'm going to find you an escort, she said. What are you even talking about, Andy? I asked. Said, nah. Well, it would be right for you to have fun with someone else to make it up to me, but I don't want it to be Melissa, she said. I still don't know what you're talking about, Andy. There's something going on between you and Melissa. You may not see it. She may not see it, but trust me, it's there, and it scares the hell out of me. Eric, my whole life I've been a beautiful girl. I always knew I could get any guy I wanted. I never had to worry about losing a guy to someone else, even if I didn't put my best foot forward. It's hard for me to admit this, but until tonight, I never took Melissa seriously. I mean, she's always been pretty cute, but she's shorter and bigger than me. But now my marriage is falling apart and the stress and worry about what I might lose is weighing heavily on me. I don't look my best, and Melissa has somehow lost her belly and gotten insanely trim. And you've noticed it too. Mike is very angry and doesn't want you anywhere near her. You've been spending too much time together. I'm very afraid that because of your anger at me and your so-called friendship with her, I might lose you, she said. I realize now that during our marriage I was selfish and took you for granted, but that's over with now. It won't happen again, I promise. I know I have no right to ask for any favors, but I'm begging you for it. If you want revenge, I'll find you anyone. Model, athlete, hooker, Britney Spears, or a goddamn circus clown. Anyone but Melissa, she said. I'm serious, Eric, she said. I know you better than anyone in the world, and until tonight, I've never seen you look at anyone but me like that. And when Melissa hugged you in your little parody of a handshake, her eyes almost rolled up to her forehead when you touched her. But that's not the real problem. What is the problem, Andy? I snapped back. Are you afraid you can't control the situation? You could go out and pick the biggest scumbag we know who also happened to be my best friend, and have fun with him on my deck in broad daylight. But you want to pick someone I'm going to do it with to make sure it's not someone who threatens you. Is that a problem? No, Eric, she said. That's not the problem. The problem is that to me there's a difference between love and sex. I could go out tonight and do it, and you'd still be the only man I love. I can separate the two. You can't. If you do this to Melissa, I'll lose you forever. I'm sure you will. Eventually, my curiosity will die down, and you and I will settle down, and everything will be great again, and we'll have everything we want. But if something happens with you and Melissa, things will never be the same again. Eric, I know I shouldn't ask you this, but can I sleep with you tonight? I know you still think I'm inferior, and I know you don't want to do this with me, but it's been so long since I've gotten enough sleep and felt safe and warm. As I fell asleep, I heard her quiet sobs. I felt ashamed of the way things had turned out between us. I also felt guilty because she was clearly trying to fix our relationship and I was taking it very lightly. I guess my mind was saying, let's just wait and see. If it works, then it works. If it doesn't, then we tried. Early the next morning, I dreamed that Melissa was entertaining me. It shocked me because, up until that point, I had never had such thoughts about Melissa. But something woke me up. After a second, I realized what was going on and grabbed Andy by the shoulders and pulled him away from me. What the hell is going on with you, Andy? I yelled at her. I'm sorry, she cried. I was asleep, Andy. I didn't realize what was going on. My thoughts kept going back to when none of this was happening yet. When it was just us. Before you ruined us. We were so happy, and in my dream it was just like old times. I lied through my teeth. But telling her that I dreamed I was entertaining Melissa would only make it worse. Surprisingly, I'd never lied to Andy before, and I probably should have felt guilty, but I didn't. It didn't bode well for our relationship. So why can't we just pretend it's still like that? She exclaimed. Or pretend that we've gotten past all my curiosity and the damage it's done to us. Then we could undo all that shit and just go back to being ourselves. Andy, I'm not that good at pretending, I said. You want me to pretend you weren't having fun with Mike? Pretend we haven't talked about it before. Pretend you didn't just redraw 10 years of friendship, trust, and love because you were interested. Okay, Andrea, since you're playing this well, stretch out your arms and close your eyes. Andy raised her hands in front of her. Think back to how we used to feel about each other. Go over it in your head. Remember the closeness. Imagine that I love you so much that I can't be away from you. I would do anything for you. I would chew off my own arm to get to you. I always had a feeling that if you ever died, even if it wasn't sickness or old age, even if it was something stupid like a car accident, that I would die soon after. I'm going to have to do it because I just can't live without you. Do you feel that, Andrea? I smirked. Gather all those feelings into one palm. Even in the dark, I could see Andy smiling. Now into the other palm, I began. Have you noticed the distance between us now? Have you noticed that I still have a hard time being in the same room with you for more than a few minutes? I tried really hard last night, but sometimes I still get goosebumps when you touch me. Do you understand that, Andy? When I come home, I don't run around the house looking for you because I can't be away from you anymore. Sometimes I pray that you're visiting someone, but then I wonder who you're visiting and if you're having fun with them. Every time you even accidentally touch me, I have to shower about 100 times before I feel clean. If you were in a car accident, I don't even know if I'd be upset, let alone dead. In a way, I understand that you're trying to save our marriage, Andrea. but I can't shake the feeling that maybe it would be better if we just let it die. If we break up, I'll be in pain for a while, but I've pretty much gotten over it. I'm not sure how much it will hurt you because you were willing to take the risk and drop everything to entertain Mike. I don't trust you anymore, and I'm not sure I ever will. Melissa says it will take time, but I don't think we can ever get back what we had, and I wonder if I'm better off looking for something like this with someone else than settling for a pale imitation of it with you. In short, we look like Andrea's broken glass. All the water is pouring out of the hole. Only it's not water, it's my love for you. If we don't find a way to plug the leak, it's all going to disappear. Andy's smile faded, and she cried again. Compare those two sets of feelings, Andy, I snapped back. Which one do you like better? The first one, she answered quietly. It's the one I want back so badly. I'd do anything to get it back. And despite what you think, we'll do it. It'll take a little time and it'll take a lot of work. But I promise you that when it's over, we'll be back there. And we'll be stronger. Something in her words alerted me, but I paid no attention to it. So, Andrea, think about how things are kind of secondary right now, I said. I don't want to, she said. I don't like it. I hate it. But you have to run it through your head, Andy. It's very important to us that you know that, I said seriously. But why? It's disgusting, and I don't feel like you love me anymore, she snapped back. Because, Andy, that's what you wanted to know all along, I said. Now you know. I went to shower and get ready for work, leaving Andy in bed sobbing. I hated being so hard on her, but it didn't seem to be helping her. Some of the things she said made me feel awful and insecure. She said, "When is this all going to end?" And in another conversation, she said, "When will all my curiosity end?" She also told me that next time I won't be so honest. I wouldn't tell. Over the next few weeks, Andy and I's relationship gradually improved. We got back to the point where I could stay in the same room with her. And we even spent time sitting next to each other on the deck after dinner. Sometimes Mel would join us, which always made Andy jealous, but I could see she was trying not to say anything. She hated the fact that Mel and I still spent a lot of time together. "Have you entertained her yet?" Andy asked me one night. She was really mad because she saw me hugging Mel after one of our runs. We had just run our first 10-mile distance and were just two friends congratulating each other on a great accomplishment. But Andy's jealousy was out of control. "If that were true, you wouldn't be here," I replied. Andy burst into tears and ran away. Later, she came out on deck. "I'm sorry," she said. "It just hurts sometimes. I moved back into our house almost 3 months ago and things have gotten better between us. I can feel it, but you still won't even touch me, let alone anything more. But then I see you hug her. And I know it's just a friendly hug to you. But if you saw the two of you looking into each other's eyes and hugging, you'd understand why I want to strangle that bitch." "Now you know why Mike and I will never be friends again," I said. "The difference is that I only hugged Mel, in public, with clothes on. And you let Mike entertain himself." "Yes, I did," she snapped back. "I let Mike. And now I'm forever spoiled, and the only man I love, the one who promised to love me forever, won't even touch me. Do you know why I hate Melissa so much now? Not just because you're friends, but because I would literally die for you to hold me the way you just held her. The two of you are so easy together, so confident and comfortable around each other. Mike and I are not like that. It hasn't made us as close as you and Melissa. But in your mind, love and sex are connected. Where's the connection between me and Mike? We hate each other because we did it, and it cost us our happiness. Eric, if I let someone drive your precious Mustang, you'd be pissed. Let's say it was one of our neighbors who really wanted to see what it was like to drive. So I let him drive it around the block one damn time. Less than a mile, so your odometer won't even change. He didn't damage the car, and you wouldn't even know it if it weren't for the fact that you came home and saw him pull into the driveway. How would you have reacted to that? I know you would have been angry with me, of course, but let's not talk about how you feel about me. Let's better talk about how you'd treat your precious damn car." She could see me getting angry at the mere thought of it, because we both knew I'd probably kill him, cut his body into little pieces, and bury them all over the country. No one touched my Mustang. You'll probably wash the car 2 or 3 times inside and out. Restore the leather with Armor All Leather Cleaner. Even if it only sat in the driver's seat, you'll treat all the seats and the interior. Treat the driver's seat twice or even 3 times. The steering wheel and anything else he touched at least 3 times. You're going to be pissed as hell. It'll take a couple days, maybe even a week, but I doubt it. But then you'll get back behind the wheel, won't you? And there's nothing you can do about it. You love this car, so even if someone else ruined your precious car, you'd get behind the wheel again. You'd never have the keys to it, and if I didn't drive it, I'd reprogram the garage door so no one could even go near it. But I'd probably get behind the wheel again, I admitted. So why the hell don't you want to give me a ride? She snapped back. Mike entertained me for 5 damn minutes one time. I already told you it was no big deal. I didn't even like it. I was just curious. It's been 3 months now. You haven't even kissed me. Why can't we go back to everything? A hug, like the one you just gave Melissa, would have given me some hope, Eric. I should have known that's what this was all about, I said slowly. How about tonight? I said with a smile, pulling out my iPhone. Will you give me a hug tonight? She asked hopefully. I thought you wanted to be led around, I smiled. I thought you wanted to get to the point. I do, she said. This is for you, I said, holding out my cell phone to her. When she heard Mike's voice in the receiver, her whole face turned red and she threw the phone as hard as she could. That's how I lost that iPhone. The end of summer was approaching and Andy and I decided to throw a party. Just a few friends, neighbors, and a few family members. Melissa was invited, which really pissed Andy off, but Mike wasn't invited, which made me very happy. Her parents, brothers, sisters, and spouses would be coming. We were very busy planning and buying food and groceries for the party when this happened. Mel and I had just gotten back from a run, and then I noticed Mike jumping over the fence into my yard. Andy had told me she was going out for a bit to do some shopping for the party, so I knew she wasn't home. Why the hell is that bastard climbing into my yard when neither Andy nor I are home? I followed him, and I swear to God I thought he was trying to steal something from me or borrow one of my tools without asking because I knew I'd never lend him anything again. Mike didn't stop in my yard but jumped over the fence into George and Sandy Cooper's yard. I waited a few minutes and followed him. He entered their house without knocking. I pulled out my new iPhone 4. I bought it to replace the iPhone 3GS that Andy had thrown away. I crept over to the window. I was sure Mike was having fun with Sandy Cooper right now, and the video would help Mel get rid of his cheating forever. Sandy Cooper wasn't home, but George was, him and 2 other guys at the same time as Andy. I'm next, Mike said. No, Mike. You were useless to me and ruined my marriage, Andy said. I almost lost Eric because of you. I didn't wait for Mike's turn. Damn it, I thought I was done crying over Andy, but no. I ran into the house and started packing everything I needed. I was loading my suitcase into the Mustang when Melissa came out of the house. Eric, what's wrong? She asked. I held out my phone to her and hit the play button. Eric, I'm so sorry, she said. She was crying too, and I could tell she meant what she said. Where are you taking her this time? Back to her parents' house? No, Mel, I'm leaving this time. There's no going back. I just need to get away while I start hiding my assets to limit my options in the divorce. Believe it or not, I'm going to miss you more than that cheating whore, I said. No, you won't. Don't say things that aren't true, she said. Wait a minute, I need to get something. Mel ran into the house and came back with a suitcase. She threw it in the trunk next to mine and said, Let's go. I looked at her in shock. I've been telling you for a long time that I'm going to get rid of Mike. Now is as good a time as any, she said. Unless you want me to come with you. I didn't give much thought to where I was going. We drove around the neighborhood for a while and ended up having lunch by the lake. As it started to get dark and we still didn't have any plans, I told Mel that we would have to stay at a motel. I saw the first of these terribly romantic couples strolling along the boardwalk. I was seized with such rage that I grabbed my huge soda and hurled it at them. It would have hit them too, if Mel hadn't grabbed my arm and made me throw it at the wrong target. As soon as we got back to the car, my phone rang. I saw that it was Andy, and I put the phone to voicemail. We drove to the closest hotel we could find. It turned out to be the Summit Inn. A little pricey, but at least we wouldn't have to worry about prostitutes. I had seen enough prostitutes on my phone tonight to last me a lifetime. It was funny because I always thought I would spend my whole life with a prostitute in my phone. Mel and I walked over to the counter and set our suitcases on the floor. A few seconds later, a heavy-set older man sat down behind the counter. Mister, your wife is just lovely, he said. I looked at him strangely and replied, My wife is a lecherous blonde whore. That's why she's the ugliest bitch I can imagine. She doesn't have blonde hair, he said, puzzled. Suddenly I realized he was talking about Mel. I smiled and said, "Yes, you're right. She is really beautiful. She's the most beautiful woman I know." "We need 2 rooms," I said. "One," Melissa said. "Neither of us should be alone tonight." "Oh my God, we're in trouble," I said as we walked into the room. "There's only one bed in there." Melissa started laughing. "Eric, whether you know it or not, you're my best friend. I trust you completely. We'll be fine no matter what happens, but we need to talk." I didn't know whether to run out of the room or not. When a woman says, "We need to talk," or something like that, it's always pretty damn serious. No sooner had we started talking than Melissa's phone rang. "I was wondering what the asshole was going to say," she said. "To tell you the truth, I didn't think he'd even notice my absence." "Oh my God," she said suddenly. "What?" I asked. "Not that asshole," she replied. She put me on speakerphone and put her finger to her lips, implying that I should listen but not say anything. I nodded my head. "Hi, Andrea," Melissa said. "Melissa, I hate to bother you, but could you come over to my place? I really need someone to talk to right now," Andy said. "Andrea, I'm not home right now. I'm back at work, so I can't come over. Maybe it can wait until tomorrow." Melissa smiled. "Besides, you and I aren't exactly friends, so are you sure I'm the right person for you to talk to?" "Mel, I'm really sorry I did that to you because of Mike. I'll do anything to make it up to you. I'll give you anything you want, just name it." "You're the person I need to talk to more than anyone else," Andy said. "Why is that, Andrea?" Mel asked. "Because you know more than I do what Eric is thinking right now and where he might be headed." "Melissa, Eric just ran away. I don't know where he is now or when he'll be back. Last time we had a fight and he kicked me out, there was a reason. As you know, I did something terrible, but this time I have no idea why he just dumped me," Andy whined. Melissa and I tried our best not to laugh. "We're slowly getting closer again," Andy said sadly. "It's been really hard for me, but I'm trying my best because I love him so much. We're even planning a party together for the day after tomorrow. I went shopping while you guys were running around. I talked to Mike and he said that you and Eric went shopping as usual. Mike's very jealous of that, you know? Anyway, he said he heard you coming back to the house, so he knew you came home. That's probably when you went back to work. So where did Eric go?" She whimpered. "Andrea, it's only 9:30. Maybe he just went out for a drive. When you and I and my asshole husband and I were planning your little holiday. Eric used to go for a ride in his car every night, remember? It always seemed so silly to me," Mel said. "Why? He likes driving that car. I used to think that after me, this car was his favorite thing in the world. Now I'm pretty sure this car is ahead of me," Andy said. "I didn't say it was stupid that he drives a car, Andy. I said you were stupid," said Mel. "Eric is a really great guy. He loves you so much. Do you know how lucky you are? Most women would die wishing someone would treat them the way he treats you. When we were friends, you used to tell me all the time about how good you were together. Why would you risk that to have fun with my lazy husband? That's what's stupid," Mel said. "I've been wishing I were in your shoes lately," said Andy. "A few weeks ago I got jealous when I heard him talking about how wonderful you are. I saw him hugging you and it made me want to kill you, Melissa. I would never let anyone come between us. Anyway, I did a really stupid thing and I regret it, but I'll have to deal with it later. I hope you're right. His car is gone, so he probably just went for a drive. If you hear from him, please let me know." "I told you," Melissa said, hanging up the phone. "That asshole doesn't even know or care that I'm gone. At least Andrea cares a lot about you. My husband, on the other hand, doesn't care where I am or if I come home." I put my arm around Melissa to comfort her. After a few minutes, she calmed down. "Why don't you go take a shower while I make some phone calls?" she said. I figured she wanted to be alone, so I headed for the shower. I got out and went back into the house. "Eric, turn off the lights," Melissa yelled. I did, and then she came out of the bathroom and got into bed. "I thought we were going to talk," I reminded her. "We might as well talk tomorrow," she said. "I don't want to hurt your virtue." "How can our talking hurt my virtue? We talk all the time." "You're the person I'm most comfortable talking to," I said. "If we turn the lights back on, I don't think we'd be able to talk much," Melissa said. "And even though our spouses let us do that, I'm not sure it's a good idea. But I've realized what I want Andrea to do for all my resentments to go away." Before I could ask what exactly, Melissa declared that she would never tell me that. It was as if she'd read my mind. Andy and I had been like that once. I missed it. Sometime during the night, the inevitable fight happened. It was still dark when I realized Melissa was in front of me. After a microsecond, I realized where this was going, and we got down to business. After that, we fell asleep. I slept like a log. All the tension of the last few months was gone. In the morning, we excused ourselves from work and took a vacation. We called my lawyer and made an appointment with him. We spent the rest of the day in bed doing the aforementioned unpleasant business. Sometime after lunch, I was about to call room service and remembered my phone. The voicemail was full, and I had over 50 messages from Andy. Melissa had gotten calls from Mike, and Andy had at least 10. We couldn't stay at the hotel too long, but after lunch I had an idea. Mel and I could move into an underground house. I hooked up the electricity, we spent the rest of the day shopping for the things we needed, and moved in that evening. "Which bedroom will you take?" Mel asked. "I was hoping the one you live in," I replied. "Smart man," said Mel. We spent the evening making plans. We had 2 divorce proceedings to start, and other cases. We decided to confront our cheating spouses at a party Andy and I were supposed to throw. Since she would obviously cancel the party, we started making phone calls to make sure the right people would be there. I had a few plans for myself. I had a friend who bought one of the decommissioned patrol cars at a police auction. He never got to drive it on the street because he never got around to taking the local police colors and badges off of it. I also had a couple friends who owed me money and were willing to do anything to get rid of that debt. At 7 o'clock in the evening, guests started arriving at my house. Luckily, the first to arrive were Andy's parents. "Mom, Dad, I had to cancel tonight's party," Andy said. She was crying and didn't look well. "I know," her mom said, "but Eric called and said we should probably talk after the party. That's why we're here. Please tell me you didn't sleep with another guy the first time you barely avoided divorcing Andrea. You couldn't have been that stupid, could you?" Andy just turned away from her mother. Sandy Cooper arrived next, but George wasn't with her. She said he was on his way. Andy found out that Eric had invited the Coopers too and wondered why. A few minutes later, Mike appeared with a confused look on his face. He looked around and finally asked Andy where Melissa was. Sally Stevens and her husband Kurt and Andy's brother Andy and his wife came in next. Tom and Esther Jenkins called and said they were running late. Esther really wanted to come, but Tom seemed to be stalling. The other couple, who no one recognized, claimed that Eric had invited them, but they didn't arrive until almost 8 o'clock. Sandy couldn't figure out where George was or why he was taking so long to show up. George was in hell. At 7 o'clock, as Sandy was pulling up to Eric and Andy's house, George was stopped by a police car. They made him get out of the car and handcuffed him, putting his hands behind his back. They then put him in the back of the patrol car and began driving him around the neighborhood, asking him questions. George was sure it was a case of mistaken identity. Putting his hands behind his back, George couldn't see his watch, but he noticed that it was starting to get dark. He knew Sandy would be worried. He asked if he could call his wife. The officers said they would call him after he was arrested and charged. "He hasn't been arrested yet, just detained. So sit tight." George looked at the clock on the dashboard of the patrol car and saw that it was almost 8:15. He could have sworn he had only been in the car for 20 minutes. What George didn't realize was that every time he turned away, the officers turned the clock on the dashboard forward 15 minutes. Finally, they stopped in a deserted area and waited. When the clock on the dashboard read 8:55, the radio beeped and one of the officers began to speak into it. "What the hell do you mean you got him?" yelled the officer. "We've got the bastard right here in the back of our goddamn patrol car." George was perplexed as to what was going on. "Okay, buddy, you were right. It's a case of mistaken identity. Sorry for interrupting your evening." As the officer was removing George's handcuffs, it seemed to him that he was taking a very long time to remove them. He was actually resetting George's watch to match the time of 9:05 on the dashboard of the patrol car. "You're free to go, sir," the officer said. "What do you mean I'm free to go?" George asked. "You drove me far outside my neighborhood, held me for 2 hours, and now you're just going to leave me here?" "Sorry, sir. We're not allowed to transport civilians in a patrol car unless they're involved in an investigation or crime," the cop said as he stepped away from the car with his partner. "Hey, there's a gas station over there. Call someone to pick you up. Have a nice evening, sir." Then George could have sworn he heard the cops laughing as they drove away. George looked at his watch. Damn it, it was already 9 o'clock at night. As George started walking toward the gas station, a guy in a mask came out from behind a boarded-up convenience store. He headed toward George. "Hey, buddy, I don't have any money or even a wallet," George said. The man didn't speak, but simply walked up to George and without saying a word, punched him in the face with such force that George was stunned. He jerked back and tried to put his hands up, waiting for his balance to stabilize. "What the hell?" George said. A third blow knocked George off his feet. George thought the fight was over and he had lost. It was the first time in his life he had ever received such a thorough kick in the ass. George was wrong, but the fight was just beginning. Although George was fooled into believing that the ass-kicking started at 9 o'clock, it was actually not until 8 o'clock. At 8:45, Eric's Mustang pulled up in the driveway. He and Melissa got out of the car, went into the house and out onto the patio. He saw his mother-in-law and father-in-law, as well as several neighbors. He greeted his wife's family warmly and hugged Sandy Cooper. He nodded to the mystery couple. Mike approached Melissa to talk to her, but she waved him off and followed Eric. Finally, Andy came downstairs and saw Eric. She ran up to him and tried to hug him, but he pushed her away. "Eric, I forgive you for just running away from me, although I'm not sure why you did it," she said. The other guests politely pretended to be doing other things, but were actually watching and listening intently. "Wait, it's not like you ran off alone to think. You were with Melissa, weren't you?" she said. "But why?" "Because we were just getting started. I was beginning to feel that you loved me again and that we had a chance to overcome our problems." She sank to the floor and began to cry. Eric started clapping his hands. "Everyone can come over here for a minute," he said. Melissa started clapping her hands, too. "Everyone help Andy," Eric said. "That was the greatest acting performance in history. Now we know where Andy's true talents lie." "I think everyone here knows that Andy and I have had a rough time in our marriage. I recently kicked her out of the house for a while. Andy told me that she was wondering what it would be like to do it with another man," Eric said. "I begged her not to do it, but she did it anyway. She went and did it with my ex-best friend Mike, with her ex-best friend Melissa's husband. It broke my heart. I hated her for what she did to us, but I still loved her very much. We had spent the last few weeks trying to fix what Andy's curiosity had done to our marriage, but I was having a very hard time. As Andy said, we had just started this long process of repairing our relationship when I noticed my former best friend heading to the backyard. I followed him and recorded everything I found on my phone. Everyone please follow me into the room." Everyone watched as I plugged my iPhone into the plasma TV. In the same room were George Cooper, Kurt Stevens, Tom Jenkins, and of course, Andy. Everyone was shocked that Mike was watching this. The great thing about the iPhone 4 is that it shoots high-resolution video. The image on the screen was very clear. Andy's dad turned his head and begged me to stop recording. Andy's mother spewed the contents of her stomach onto the parquet floor in the living room. I think everyone now understands why I disappeared a couple days ago. But they can't understand what it feels like when the person you loved and wanted to spend the rest of your life with hurts you so much twice. I hope you all realize that there will be no third time. All the love I once had for her is gone. We only have one path now." Eric fell silent and nodded to the mystery couple. They each pulled out an envelope from somewhere and handed one to Andy and the other to Mike. "You've been served," they told them. Tom Jenkins and Kurt Stevens were also handed envelopes. Their envelopes contained papers from the lawsuit. Since George was not in attendance, the man asked his wife Sandy Cooper to notify him that he too was being sued. "That cheating bastard," Sandy shouted as she headed for the door. "No wonder he left me. I'm going to divorce his cheating ass too." Everyone else headed for the door as well. Soon, only Mike, Melissa, Eric, Andy, and Andy's parents were left in the room. "Eric, it's over. It'll never happen again," Andy cried. "You're right about that," Eric said sadly. "Where are you going?" Andy shouted. "We have to talk about this. Things can still get better. I still love you. I only love you. You heard me tell them that on the tape. The only person I like to do it with is you. That was on the tape too. I just needed to find out. It was just curiosity." She grabbed Eric's leg as he tried to walk away. "Where do you think you're going?" Mike asked Melissa. "We need to talk too. I'm not thrilled about you going off and having fun with other guys either." even after what I did. Two wrongs don't make a right, Melissa. We have bills to pay, woman, and your check hasn't arrived in our account yet. Mike reached out, grabbed Melissa's shoulder, and turned her around to face him. You're not leaving with him again, he snapped. We're still married. No divorce and nothing more with other guys. Eric didn't even break his stride. He just turned and slapped Mike. He then put his arm around Melissa and led her out of the room. Melissa turned around as she and Eric reached the door. You don't have to worry about me having fun with other guys, Mike. I would never do that. I'm faithful to the man I love. I've only made love to Eric. He's the one. And there are no other guys, including you. And I think I got what I wanted. Eric, Andy's father said, I have no idea how you feel. I can't believe my daughter is capable of what we saw. Give yourself time to cool down and we'll all get together and work this out. Eric nodded, and he and Melissa left. It was almost 6 weeks before they met again. During those 6 weeks, Eric didn't communicate with Andy. She had called him hundreds of times, but the ban prevented her from seeing him at work, and she didn't know where he lived. She suspected he was still with Melissa, and that made her angry. She was sure that Eric was in love with Melissa and not just having fun with her. That, in Andy's opinion, was simply unfair. She was never going to leave Eric or fall in love with anyone else. During those 6 weeks, several noteworthy things happened. In particular, Andy had some sort of breakdown. Eventually, Eric showed up with a truck to pick up the rest of Melissa's stuff. Mike wouldn't let Eric take them until the police arrived, and Eric showed them the court order authorizing him to take Melissa's things. Where are these things? Mike asked. She's at the doctor's office today, Eric smiled. What did you do? Mike asked. Just talking about Eric practicing with Melissa gave Andy fits of crying and screaming. Another interesting incident happened to Kurt Stevens one Sunday. Kurt was stuck at a red traffic signal. At that time, an abandoned cement truck crashed into his car. At the same time, Eric and Melissa were at church. During the ceremony, Eric got up once to go to the bathroom and left the door open. A usher, who was actually a police officer, saw Eric's foot and could vouch that he was in the restroom the entire time. Suspicion of Eric arose because when the beating of George Cooper was discovered, Eric was the only person who George believed had a motive to wish him harm. But during the Eric incident, there were several witnesses, including George's ex-wife, who could confirm that Eric had arrived at the party before 9 o'clock and left only after George had finished beating him. George was certain that everything happened at 9 o'clock. The detectives were sure of this as well, since even George's watch, which had been broken during the incident, had stopped just after 9. Eric was excluded. He was also excluded from the Kurt Stevens case. Because he couldn't be in the restroom with an upset stomach and driving a truck at the same time, George will probably never be able to walk again. He also lost his wife and 60% of his possessions. His life would never be the same. Kurt was in a coma, and no one was sure if he would ever wake up. And if he did, it would only be as a single man because his wife had divorced him. Tom Jenkins didn't wait for the divorce. When he found out what happened to Kurt and George, he just got in his car and drove away. He didn't even start packing. He just disappeared. He spent the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, afraid to settle down or stay in one place for long. He also developed a phobia towards married women. He couldn't be around them, no matter how innocent the situation. It was a terrible price to pay. Andy was handsome, but it wasn't worth it. At our meeting, things went about as Melissa and I had envisioned. Both Mike and Andy refused to sign the divorce papers. Melissa gave Mike their house. He couldn't afford it since he wasn't working. He also couldn't pay for his truck and utilities. Mike, who was in his late 40s, lived with his parents for a while, and then ended up on the streets. I offered Andy the house and half of our savings and checking accounts. I paid off her credit cards and offered to pay her a lump sum in lieu of child support so I wouldn't have to socialize with her. Eric, can't you settle this somehow? Her father asked. She's ready to forget about your revenge. We're all ready. We know what she put you through. Eric, I would give anything to have you back, Andy said. But you're not getting a divorce, and you won't get one. Besides, Andy said, Melissa looks very beautiful, but her gut is coming back. Are you sure you want to stay with that? I laughed, reaching out and stroking Andy's head. Silly rabbit, it's not guts, I said. What is it, Lucky Charms? Andy smiled. No, it's a baby, Melissa said, rubbing her belly. I told you I got what I wanted. Immediately afterward, Mike threw up. At that point, Andy's consciousness became foggy, and she had to be hospitalized. I'm going to kill you, bitch, she screamed, lunging across the table at Mel. That was the last time I saw her until she showed up at the hospital this morning. Melissa was still asleep, so I went down to the gift store to buy her more flowers, even though there was nowhere to put them. I wanted her to know how much I loved her and how special our daughter was to me. When I got back to her floor, Melissa's room was full of people outside. I saw at least 5 security people and a few actual police officers. A few minutes later, I saw Andy being led away in handcuffs. I later learned that Andy had entered Melissa's room ostensibly to hand over a card. Vigilant nurses saw on the video monitor Andy trying to strangle Mel while she slept. 2 nurses entered the room and pulled her away from Melissa, while another called security. Andy eventually returned to the mental institution and spent an unknown amount of time there. All that is known is that she will spend at least 10 years there. The good news is that this crazy bitch and her curiosity will be off the table for a long time. The bad news is that in our state you can't sue someone who is not mentally competent. Unfortunately, that means I am still married to her. I was able to get my house back. Melissa and I live there. She finally found a teacher's aide to help with grading all those papers, so our evenings are free to sit on the patio and enjoy each other. We often go down to the lake and walk along the water's edge because, damn, it's very romantic. But I keep an eye out for guys who want to throw shit at us out of jealousy. We named our daughter Curiosity because if it wasn't for curiosity, she wouldn't have been born. Life is good. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.